Hi there. In this video, we're going to show how to repose an STL that you've downloaded from the internet. We'll look at two methods, both of which sound complicated, but really are not if you follow the steps here. First thing we're going to do is delete this cube. So we select it, press X, and delete. The first thing you need to do is download a model from the internet, obviously. And I'm going to pick a model that I found on Colts 3D. It is an STL, and I will import it. File, import, STL. This is it, Molly. So we'll import her. It can take a few moments. But here she is. Now, she's the wrong way around. So the first thing I'm going to do is align her with her origin point. It's probably not necessary, but it's a good thing to do. So I'm going to make sure the model is selected. Go to Object, Set Origin, Geometry to Origin. And then I think we need to rotate her. So RX 90. Now, having done that, it's probably worth just applying the rotation. This particular model, Molly, was created by Andrea3DNA, and I will put the link to this model down below in the comments, should you wish to download it. Molly the Punk. Now, the most important step with this is to manage our own expectations. There are limits to what we can do. If the geometry doesn't actually exist, for example, if hands are in a pocket, we can't just move the hand out of the pocket and expect there to be fingers at the end of it. Also, as in this case, the feet are attached to the base, so we can't just move the legs around off the base. It can be done, of course. You can remove the base and you can fill in the bottom of the shoes. That's a bit beyond the scope of what we're going to do here in this video. However, we can do a fair bit, so let's give it a go. Before we do, it's also worth remembering that this video is specifically about downloading an STL from the internet. And STL files are just a load of triangles, basically, and they're not ideal for what we're trying to do. So if you have a means of remeshing the model first, that's the ideal thing to do. But most people don't have a way of remeshing, at least a way that works or that they're confident with, so we'll just get along without it. As a starting point, let's see if we can get Molly to point her gun straight forward. Now, to do this, we will attach her arm to guides, which Blender calls bones. And then we can use the pose tools that come with Blender to move those bones, and that in turn will move her arm with them. This is called rigging, which is quite a complex subject, but we're not going to rig the whole thing. We're just going to rig the bits that we need. In this case, we will just rig her arm. So looking at this model, there are three parts of the arm that we might move separately in order to get the gun pointing forward. We have the gun part, which goes up to the wrist. We have the wrist to the elbow area here. And we have from the elbow to the shoulder. Those are the parts that we'll need to point the gun forward. I'm going to start at the upper arm. I'm going to move the 3D cursor to approximately where I want this bone to go and press Shift and right click. And that moves the 3D cursor there. And then we're going to add an armature, a single bone. And that puts our single bone here. And we also have an armature in the outliner. This is the outliner. Now the bone is a bit small in this case, but that's okay. We'll select the bone, or at least we'll make sure it's selected. And we'll go into edit mode with tab. And now what we're going to do is we're going to drag this bone, grab the top bit, and with G, grab the bone and move it approximately where we want it to be. Now, when it goes inside the model, of course, it's not so easy to see. And there's a simple way to fix that. If we go to the armature button here in the Properties tab and click that, we go down to Viewport Display and click the In Front button here. That will make the bones always appear on top of the model, wherever they actually happen to be. So let's move this around into the right place. I'll grab that bit, G, move it there. You'll notice, actually that's actually worked a lot better than I expected, but if I look at the model from the top, this isn't in the middle of the shoulder, so we'll grab it, move it into the middle. You have to look all around your model to make sure that that bone is approximately in the right place, and the right place being between the shoulder and the elbow. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now we have that. We're going to select the tip of this bone again and extrude with E a new bone down to approximately the wrist. Now if you look, that's not in the right place at all, but so we'll have to grab that and move it to approximately where the wrist is. As I say, you have to look all the way around the model to make sure you have this right. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now we will extrude one more. With the tip of the bone selected, we will extrude to the end of the gun. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Let me grab, move it up. I think that's good enough. Okay, now we only have 3 bones in our rig, which is going to allow us to move the arm. You can rig as much of it as you want, and if you want to get really complex, then you can add a full rig and do something like this. Okay, so now what we need to do is get this arm to attach itself to these bones so that when we move the bones, the arm moves. And the way to do that is to go back into object mode with Tab, select MOLLE, Shift select the bones and do Control P and go down to with automatic weights. Now, because we haven't got a complete model here, and because this computer isn't particularly quick, this might take a little while. So I'll fast forward through this bit. Now we're already in object mode, so let's select the bones, and then we go from object mode into pose mode. Let's just say I select this bone. You can see it's highlighted in a lovely blue. And if I rotate that by pressing R, see how it moves the gun. If I select this bone and rotate that, it moves the arm and the gun. And then I can rotate the gun as well. I can rotate it this way as well if I want. Now we're only making small adjustments. If we make a huge adjustment, such as this, it's perfectly possible to make quite an ugly model. But it basically will do what we want it to do. Okay, so what happens when we move this bone? Press R to rotate. Whoa! Blender has associated most of the model, poor MOLLE, to that bone. So everything's moving. And that's not what we want. Now the part of Blender that we need to use to fix this is called weight painting. Even though we're not going to do any here, we should still know what it is. What Blender has done here is to create a vertex group for each bone. Now for more information on vertex groups, you can check out the quick video linked at the end of this video on what on earth vertex groups are. It has collected the vertices of this area of the model and given it a name of this bone. It's collected the vertices of this area of the model and created a vertex group with the name of this bone. And then for this bone, it has selected vertices of all this and given it a name of this bone. And Blender uses that vertex group to know what vertices to move when you move a bone. Weight painting is pretty awful in Blender, and we really don't need to be exact. So we're going to modify the vertex groups directly ourselves. These ones we don't need to touch, but what we will do is modify the vertex group for this bone and just remove all of the bits of the model that shouldn't be attached to this bone. Now you can do it with weight painting. You can actually paint the bits of the model that are affected by this, and that will give us more control, but I don't think we should be doing it in this video. So the first thing we need to do to fix this is to find out what the name of this bone is. And that's actually very easy to do. If you go to the bone properties, which is in the properties tab here, you go to the top, it has the name of the bone here. This is remarkably called bone. You can rename it if you want to. If I selected this bone, it's called bone 001, and that one is bone 002. We're not going to change those. We're just going to have a look at this one. So now we know it's called bone. Okay, first we need to go into object mode and then select the model. And then if we go into edit mode, everything will be selected, as is always the case, it seems. And then we press Alt-A to unselect everything. Here is the rather ugly geometry of the model. Now what we will do is we'll go into the vertex groups, which is this little triangle here in the properties tab. If we look here, there's 3 vertex groups, 1 for each of the bones. And there's bone 1 and bone 2. Now if I select bone 2, for example, and press select, it shows you which vertices are attached to bone 2. If I Alt-A to get rid of that, and do the same with bone 1, it shows you these vertices. Maybe a bit too many actually, but never mind. Alt-A to clear that. Now let's have a look at bone. We select that. Well, it's half the model. So what we really want to do is to get rid of all this stuff. There's 2 ways of doing it. Select all the vertices we don't want and click the remove button. But I think that's going to be quite difficult because they're everywhere and there may be individual vertices down here. So what I will do is I'm just going to do it again. Just going to start again. We will remove all of these vertices. So everything is selected. Press remove. Now it has removed them from the group, but it hasn't removed them from our viewport here. So now we have an empty group called bone. If I press Alt and A to get rid of everything, we will now paint them in ourselves where they should be. It's approximately this elbow, wasn't it? Now it's easier to turn X-ray mode on over here. So we'll do that. We'll press C, which gives you this little circle, which you can increase or decrease with a mouse wheel. And then you can just paint on here. The reason we had X-ray mode on is to make sure that we get the vertices behind as well. We have to be a bit careful when we get up here because we don't want vertices on the back of the body. Now, one of the annoying things with this C option for selecting things is that you can't move the model around. You have to come out of it with the right mouse button and then you can move the model. Go in, close, press C again, and then we'll remember that we will be selecting vertices right through the model as well, so we have to be careful at what angle we're looking at it. We don't have to be perfect for what we're trying to do here. But I'll just go down, do something that looks about right. Look on the other side of the model. Probably we'll move a little bit of her armpit. There's a perfect example of what I meant. I did her armpit over here. And because we had X-ray mode on, it selected all those as well. So I'll just unselect them. I can do that with C as well by holding the middle mouse button down or pressing Shift and then just scrubbing over them. Okay, so now we need to assign these to the bone vertex group. And so press the assign button. And that should be okay. Let's find out. Turn X-ray mode off first. Go into object mode. Select the bones or the armature. And then we go into pose mode. And now if we select this bone and rotate it, it only rotates the arm. Now you will see, because this is an STL and because we haven't used weight painting, this is quite horrible here. And we're going to fix that in sculpting afterwards. Okay, so let's make her point the gun straight forward, which is our original aim. I might speed this up. Okay, so that's pretty much that. We can add bones to other parts of the body. If we added some more bones in there and did the Control P with automatic weights again, then that will work, and then you could adjust this arm too. But we need to fix this, which isn't very good. So we're going to fix this with sculpting. So I'm going to say we're happy with this pose. We're going to go into object mode, select the model, and go to Object, Convert, Mesh. And that will apply everything. We don't need the armature anymore, so I'll turn it off. Now that is fixed. I don't actually like it that much, but it'll do. Now we're going to fix these, and we're going to do it in sculpt mode. So with the model selected, we're going to go into sculpt mode. All we're going to do is smooth these out. Now you can't do this as it is because the geometry is all over the place, as you can see. And that's the result of stretching, basically, an STL. So we need to introduce some more geometry in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the smooth brush here. And then we're going to go over to the tool properties, click on this button, and we're going to scroll down to this DIN Topo or Dyn Topo. And we select it. An error will appear, but it always does that. So just click on OK and open it. Now, if you've not done this before, it's easiest to set this detailing from relative detail to constant detail, and then increase the resolution up to, well, I think 40 is quite good, but I'm not sure this computer's going to handle it, but we'll try it on 40. But what this does is when we use the brush, it will add geometry as needed, but only in the area that we brush. So let's try it. We'll turn the strength down to maybe 50% and just do light strokes. There you go. Oh, you can see another bit there. If you're big into sculpting, you can do a lot more than this, obviously. But I think for this kind of model, this would be fine. Okay, so now I'm going to try and do this in a different way. We're going to use a method which is actually easier, and certainly is easier for just doing this arm, but it doesn't give you as much control as doing it the way we have just done this with the bones. We're going to use the pose brush, and I will start with a newly imported version of this model. Okay, here we are with a new freshly imported model, and I have applied the rotation as we did in the first one. So let's go into sculpting mode. This isn't difficult, so you don't need to worry about this. It is actually easier in a lot of respects. With the model selected, we go into sculpt mode. And then we're going to select the Draw Face Sets icon. And that's this one here. So we select that. If you hover over the gun and press Shift W and move the mouse up, you'll see it draw in a color that may not be the same as this. The face set, it's called, along the arm. And we keep going till we get to approximately the top. And now we're going to draw another face set to go up to the elbow. We hover over the gun, Shift W. For some reason there's a pause before it actually does anything. But then we go up to the elbow, down there. And then we add one more, Shift W. And we go to the wrist. You can't really see there, but that was close. If you find that the face set is merging with other bits of the model, when you do this, if you press 2 while you're dragging the mouse up, it will follow the topology, or at least it will try to. These face sets are okay, but they're not great. The way to increase this green face set here up to the wrist is to hover over the green, press Control, and drag. Now notice it doesn't work. This, I'm 100% sure, is a bug. It does work most of the time, and it doesn't work on this model. And I have seen it on a couple of other models where it doesn't work. But it's easy to fix. You press Tab, which takes you back into edit mode. And then you press Tab again, which takes you back to sculpt mode. Now, hover over the green, press Control, it works. So now we can draw in that face set up to the wrist. Looks okay, I think. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. And the blue one looks okay, actually. But this one is a bit messed up. We're going to make it look a little bit like the vertex groups we did before. We will grow the face set a bit here, up to the top of the shoulder, I think. You can adjust the size of the mouse pointer here by pressing F. You can do big bits, or you can do little bits. And if you zoom in, you can do some very fine-grained control. Remember to zoom over the face that you want to extend first. Press Control, and you can do some very nice control if you want to. Now, there is no option for reducing the size of a face set, which sounds pretty worrying to start with, until you find out that no face set equals a face set. So if I go in here and hover over the no face set and press Control, it will extend no face set over to the face set, effectively just rubbing out the one you've got. But let's do this. I would suggest not affecting something like this article of clothing, because you don't really want that to be deformed. Obviously, if you're doing the model yourself from scratch, you absolutely would want it deformed, but we're trying to do something that the STL file wasn't really designed for. But anyway, that's about right. Now, one thing I do like to do is I like to make these a bit smoother. I don't think it's really necessary, but it might be. But it makes it look nicer. If we scroll down here to the mesh filter, select that, go up to filter type and change it to relax face sets. Then if I drag my mouse across the screen with the left mouse button held down, it will smooth up those face sets. Really unnecessary. Okay, so what are we going to do? We are going to go to the pose brush next, which is this icon here. Okay, and now again we should be in the active tool tab, this one. And then if we go down a little bit to the rotation origins, change it from topology to face sets. And now if we move our mouse pointer over the gun, you'll see one single white line which goes from where the mouse is to the end of the face set. So now if I hold the left mouse button down, I can move the gun. Gentle movements, because it's a little bit sensitive, it has to be said. I will Control Z out of that just for now. You can do this part of the arm by the same method. Or if you change these pose IK segments over here from 1 to the number of bones you have, in our case 3, you'll notice that you get 3 lines, and you can move a whole lot together. Do that again. If you're gentle with this and careful with it, you can do a very, very good job. Now we still have the same problem here. Not bad actually, but again, that'll have to be fixed in the same way as we did with the last method we used. Now you can rotate as well. Let's put this pose IK segment down to 1 again, but let's just rotate the gun. If you hold the Control button down, it'll rotate. Now, if you don't have the Control button down, it will move from side to side. Control button down, it'll rotate. So there you have it. If you want to learn something about cutting up and keying a model in Blender, then please click the video on the top right, or you might prefer the video on the bottom left of your screen. I don't know what that will be. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, I do answer them. Please feel free to put them in the comments below, and thank you for watching.